This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work with another Wolff Responds. I'd like briefly to speak with you about the economic crash we are living through. Toward the end of April, it's clear we're going to be somewhere between 30 and 40 million people filing for unemployment. And remember, this is not only the greatest crash already since the Great Depression of the 1930s, but the unemployment count is a major undercounting. The 10 to 12 million undocumented immigrants thought to be in the United States are people who mostly work for a living because they're poor. They too have lost their jobs, but they cannot file for unemployment. Most are afraid to go anywhere near government agencies for fears of being captured by ICE, deported, and all the rest. So it's a collapse of enormous significance. People's lives are being uprooted, partly by the virus and the lockdown, partly by the unemployment. Everyone is anxiety-ridden. Will the job be there when the unemployment ends? Will the company that hired me, the office, the store, the factory, will it be in business anymore? And will they give me my job back? And under what circumstance? The uncertainty, it's all negative. It's all crashing in on us. I want to talk to you about this economic crash. And I want to challenge with you and for you the notion that this crash is first and foremost about a virus. It isn't. Let me explain. In the history of capitalism, a system now 300 to 400 years old, thought to have begun, at least in its modern form, in England back in the 17th century. And here we are, early in the 21st century. So 300 to 400 years capitalism took to go from England to the rest of Europe, North America, Japan, and now it's the global system. Here is the single most important fact about that system's history. Wherever capitalism settled in as the major dominant economic system, it crashed every 4 to 7 years. What do I mean? Every 4 to 7 years, suddenly, significant numbers of people lose their jobs. It's not because they don't work as well as they did a week or a month or a year before. It's not that they aren't as productive as they were before. It has nothing to do with the individual worker. The system breaks down. The employer suddenly can't sell. And so the employer lays off. And of course, as the employer lays off, the laid off people can't buy, which means other employers can't sell, and they lay off, and you have that spiral down that we call a recession, a depression, a downturn, a crisis. We have so many words for this in the English and in every other language because it happens so often. Now that we've studied 300 to 400 years of capitalism's history, we know every 4 to 7 years this happens. Sometimes, if we're lucky, the economic crashes are short-lived and don't cut very deep. But at other times, they cut very deep and last a long time. The Great Depression of the 1930s hit in October of 1929 and really wasn't completed until early in 1941. That's 11 years. Wow. That's a long time. The Great Depression was a capitalist downturn that was long and deep, which they often can be. The last one we had in 2008 and 9 was a doozy, almost as bad as the Great Depression, so it got the name the Great Recession. Whatever you call it, let's take a look. We're in the year 2020. That is 20 years of a new century. And during that time, we've had 3 economic crashes. The first one was in the spring of 2000. It got the name dot-com crash because it was associated with a stock market collapse when a whole bunch of high-tech companies whose stock prices had gone crazy, even though these companies were young and had never earned a profit and did not look like they would anytime soon. But their prices went crazy until people got scared, sold the stock, the prices crashed. And with the stock market crash, people got worried there might be an economic crash. So that was the first one. It didn't cut too deep. It didn't last too long. Then in 2008 and 9, we had another one. Pretty much on target. This one was a doozy. It cut deep. It lasted a long time. Basically started in the middle of 2007 and wasn't done until we were into 2010. And now we have 2020, the virus, we call the crash the corona crash, like we call the 2008 one the subprime mortgage crash, and the one back in 2000, the dot-com crash. Notice how the names are given not to a capitalism that crashes every 4 to 7 years, but rather to whatever sets it off, the trigger. In 2000, dot-com stock prices, excuse me. In 2008, people failing to pay mortgages, and in 2020, a virus. Well, I think it's illegitimate to call these crashes by the names of what triggers them. They ought to be called what they are: the endlessly recurring crashes of an unstable capitalist system. Do the arithmetic. 20 years of a new century, 3 crashes so far, works out, on average, every 7 years, just like it has been all the time and everywhere. If it hadn't been for the particular triggers that worked this time, it would have been something else. How do I know? Because for 300 to 400 years, it was something else. Sure, each crisis is unique and has its unique trigger, its unique conditions. That's true. But the recurring pattern is something you have to face. Capitalism is an unstable economic system. It crashes every 4 to 7 years. A level of instability like that is an enormously important reason to be critical of this system and to try to figure out how to do better. And you know something? Capitalism has been trying from the beginning to overcome its every 4 to 7 year crash pattern. Tried everything. Government money policy, government fiscal policy, changing taxes, passing laws. In the 1930s, the last big doozy of a crash, we even had a new economics developed by a British economist named John Maynard Keynes. We call it Keynesian economics. It's all about how to try to stop these crashes. And we did try, and we failed as a capitalist system. If you lived with a person as unstable as capitalism, you would have moved out long ago. We have a system that doesn't work for most people. It produces grotesque inequality. It is unstable in the way we've just discussed. And now it has proven itself incapable of securing even our lives, our basic public health, by its failure to prepare for or cope with a virus, even coming as this virus did at a time when we should have and could have known our economic system was vulnerable to a crash which that virus just set off. Make no mistake, blaming the virus misunderstands the issue. The problem is the system.